G'day folks, it's Sean here from Air Photography. Whenever DJI releases a new drone, I like to create a beginner's guide to help those who perhaps have never flown a drone get comfortable with the equipment and help get them prepared for their very first flight. Now initially I wasn't going to create a beginner's guide for the Mavic 3 just due to the cost. I wasn't quite sure how many people would choose it as their very first drone. But in the comment section of my channel I've had a few people ask me to create one, so I'm more than happy to oblige. Now these beginner's guides can get a little long, so I highly recommend watching it in a few different segments, perhaps even bookmarking it so you can always come back and reference it later. In this video I'm going to go over easy to understand terms from the perspective of somebody who has never flown a drone. So with all that out of the way, let's just jump right in and get started. So the first thing, let's go over the different packages that are available. There's 3 different packages of the Mavic 3. They have the base kit, they have a Firmware combo, and then they have the Cine version. So basically this is all the equipment you get in the base kit. You get the drone and you get 1 battery. The battery will come pre-installed in the drone when you get it. You get the standard RC, you get a charger, you get a USB-C to USB-A cable, and that's for plugging the drone into a computer, transferring files, updating firmware, but it can also be used to charge up the controller. We get a spare set of control sticks, and we get 2 spare propellers. Now if you're going to be purchasing the Firmware kit, this is everything you're going to get inside the box. Again, you're going to get the drone. 1 battery will come installed in the drone. We get the charger again, the standard controller. We get 2 additional spare batteries, so a total of 3. We get a charging hub, makes it a lot easier to charge up multiple batteries. Again, we get a USB-C to USB-A cable, spare sticks for the controller, and you do get some extra propellers. On top of that, we also get a set of ND filters for the drone. Now, I'm not going to go too much into detail what ND filters are for. I have several videos on my channel already going over what they're used for and how to use them. And of course, with the Firmware combo, you do get a nice case with it. Now if you've purchased the Cine mode, basically you get everything the same that's in the Firmware combo, except you do get an updated remote controller, that is the RC Pro, and this is a separate purchase. You can also add it on at any time down the road if you decide you want to upgrade to it. And we're going to take a closer look at both here in a minute. Other than the controller, the only real difference with the Cine package is the drone is capable of recording ProRes. It also has a built-in SSD, a 1TB SSD, to be able to store those large files. But everything else that comes with the package is the same as the Firmware combo. When you take your drone out for the very first time, it's going to have a series of stickers on it, protective stickers, so you will need to go ahead and remove them. This year with the Mavic 3, DJI has included a newly designed Gimbal Guard. It also holds your propellers in place, makes it easier to put in and out of a bag. To remove it, that latch at the top there is just held in magnetically. So we're just going to lift it up and pull it back. And then the drone just slides out like that. Putting the gimbal guard back on is just as easy. You just slide it over the front like that. Pull that strap around and then reattach it. Now one thing that's really important to note if this is going to be your very first drone, make sure you do some research on the regulations in your country. Every country has different regulations on what needs to be done before you fly for the first time. For example, here in Canada, because this drone weighs more than 250 grams, we need to have a drone pilot certificate. On top of that, we have to register the drone with Transport Canada. So just make sure before you fly, you're fully aware of the laws and requirements in your country. Now, just like all the Mavic series, this is a foldable drone. So I'll show you quickly here how to unfold it. You want to start with the front arms. We're going to fold them out. And then these back arms just kind of fold down and out. As mentioned, when you get the drone, there will be 1 battery already pre-installed. Now the batteries that come with the drone when it's brand new are in a hibernation mode, so they need to be activated before you can charge them. And basically activation is as simple as just plugging them into the charger and they will go ahead, activate, and then start to charge. But let's go ahead here and we'll take a look around the drone. First of all, to remove the battery, there's 2 buttons on either side of it. You just press on them and you can see it unlocks and you can just pull it out. And again, when you go to put it back in, you just want to push it in firmly until you hear that click. On the back of the battery, you can see here we have a button with some LEDs. A single press on it will show us how much power is left in that battery. Now again, until you activate the battery, when you press that button, it's not going to do anything at all. But that button is also our power button. That's how we power the drone on. And with DJI drones, it requires a double press, a short press, and then a long press. So to power the drone on, we're going to press it once quickly, and then we're going to do a long press. You'll see those lights move up, and then the drone's going to go through its startup sequence. And you do the exact same thing to power the drone off. A quick press, and then a long press. The drone will then go ahead and power off. Right above the battery we have this door. It's a little rubber flap that you can open. And there's 2 things under the door, if you can see them there. We have a memory card slot, and we're going to talk a little bit more about memory here in a second. and we have a USB-C port. That USB-C port is how you're going to charge the battery if you've ordered the base kit, or even if you have the Firmware combo, you can still charge the battery when it's in the drone by plugging the charger directly into that USB-C port. It's also another way you can update the firmware by plugging the USB-C into a laptop or computer and using some DJI software to update it. However, the easiest way to update it is using the Fly app, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. Now, all around this drone we have obstacle avoidance sensors. That helps prevent the drone from crashing into obstacles. You can see we have 2 here at the top, we have 2 here at the back, and these are fisheye, so it kind of sees at the side as well. We have 2 more fisheye ones at the front, again for front obstacle avoidance and also from the side. And if we flip the drone over, we also have 2 more at the bottom, and we also have another sensor there that helps with holding position and checking distance from the ground. Above that, we have 2 LED lights, and those will initiate if it's a dark environment and you're coming into land. Now you can also turn them on manually at any time when the drone's up in the air. That can come in handy at night when flying the drone, as it will help you locate the drone up in a dark sky. And of course at the front here we have the new Hasselblad camera, micro four thirds sensor at the bottom, and we have a 1/2-inch sensor at the top. That bottom camera is the workhorse. That's what you're going to be filming with most of the time. That top camera is a hybrid zoom. It'll allow you to zoom in 28 times digitally. So now let's go ahead and we'll talk about memory. When you purchase this drone, it's not going to come with a memory card. There is 8 gigabytes of internal memory, but that's not very much. That's about 5 to 10 minutes worth of video recording. So definitely you're going to want to pick up some memory for your drone. Now if you've purchased the Cine model, as mentioned, it comes with 1 terabyte of memory internally. So with that, you really don't need to purchase any additional memory. That's more than enough to hold quite a bit of footage. The Cine version still comes with a memory card slot, so you are able to add your own memory if you do wish. DJI has a list of memory cards that it recommends on their website, including these ones that I have here. These are my personal favorites, and I would either recommend a 128 gigabyte or 256 gigabytes. It's always good to have a couple spare on hand as well, because with today's footage, the file sizes can get quite large, and you'd be surprised at how quickly you can fill up a memory card. Now to install the memory card, we're just going to open up that door at the back, and we're going to place the memory card in with the graphic facing down. Now, due to the placement of the memory card this year, it can be very difficult to get out. You can click it to come out, but it's really hard to grab it to pull it out. So one little tip there for you is to pull the battery out, and then as you can see, you can easily remove the memory card. Now quickly before we continue here, I'm going to show you how to replace propellers. If you ever notice they're cracked or damaged, or perhaps you've nipped up against a tree, you may have to replace them. To remove a damaged propeller, or one that you need to replace, we're just going to press down on it and twist. Probably hard to see, but on the propeller there's a little arrow with a lock sign, so it shows you which way to twist them to lock them in and which way to unlock them. And you just follow the same steps for all of them. Now one thing you have to be very careful of when you're going to be putting new props on is there's actually 2 different types of propellers. There's a clockwise and a counterclockwise. The only thing you really need to know to distinguish the two, you can see this one here is all black. This one here has a gray circle around it. So when you're installing propellers, you just match gray to gray and black to black. For example, when you look at these motors at the back here, this one here is all black and this one here has some gray paint on it. So that's all you would do is just match the gray to gray and black to black. And also as a rule of thumb, the propellers diagonally to one another are the same. As you can see, the ones up here have the gray on it as well. So to install the propellers, we're just going to line up those little tabs. And it doesn't matter which way it goes on because all the openings are the same. You're just going to pick one of those tabs, line it up to the hole. You're going to press down and twist. And then just double check to make sure it's locked in. And you do that for the other side as well. You're just going to twist the opposite way to lock it in. And again, double check to make sure it's locked. So now at this point, it's time to get our batteries charged up. And again, depending whether you purchase the base kit or the Firmware combo, the way you charge your batteries are going to be a little bit different. For the base kit, as mentioned, you're going to get your charger, and you're going to charge the battery directly in the drone. So I've gone ahead and plugged in the AC outlet. And what we're going to do is just open that back door and plug the charger into the back of the drone into the USB-C port. Right away, you're going to notice these lights at the back start flashing, signifying that it's charging. When it's fully charged, those lights will go out. If you've purchased a Firmware kit, you can still charge your batteries the same way in the drone, but you do have the option of charging them in the charging hub. And it works basically the same way. You're going to take that same charger and plug it into the back of the charging hub. You're going to place all your batteries inside the charging hub, including the one that's pre-installed in the drone. Now what you're going to notice when you plug these batteries in, you might see these lights kind of bouncing around from battery to battery. What it's doing there is checking to see which battery has the most amount of charge in it. Because this charging hub will not charge all 3 batteries at the same time. It charges one battery at a time in succession starting with the battery that has the most amount of charge. And the reason it does that is that way it can get you out and flying quicker. If you have a battery that still has 50% in it, and these two here say only have 20% in it, it's going to charge up that battery that still has a 50% charge first. And that way you can pull it out and it'll continue to charge the other two batteries, but that allows you to get up and flying quicker. This is a 65 watt charger, so it's very important when charging your drone or your batteries that you use this charger. If you use any other charger that you perhaps got with a tablet or a smartphone, it's going to charge these batteries really slow, and it could take upwards of 5 to 8 hours. With this charger, if a battery is completely empty, it'll take approximately 90 minutes. Now at the back of the charger here, you're going to notice there's a USB-A port, so you can take that USB-C cable that came with the package, plug it in there, and charge up the controller while you're charging batteries. And we'll take a look at that here in a minute as well. So let's go ahead and we'll take a closer look at the controllers. We'll take a look at some of the buttons and the functionality. We're also going to take a look at the RC Pro in case you decide to upgrade to it, or perhaps you've purchased the Cine drone and that's the controller you have. This one here, the gray one, is the stock controller. As mentioned, that's what you're going to get with the base package or the Fly More combo. In general, it's a fairly nice controller. It's very comfortable to hold and very functional. At the side here, we have a function button, and that can be used for a couple different things. That can be used to turn on and off the LED lights. It can also be used to center the gimbal, and it can also be used to change the behavior of that scroll wheel. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. On this side, we have a pause button and a return to home button. In the middle here, we have our mode selection. In the middle, we have our normal flight mode. On the right, we have sport mode, which flies a little bit faster. And on the left-hand side, we have Cine mode. That basically allows the drone to fly a little bit slower with a little bit more precision. It's a good mode to fly in if you're trying to capture nice cinematic content. On the other side here, we have our power button. Below that, we have some LEDs to show us how much battery power is left in the controller. And just like the drone, we can hit it once. That'll light it up to show us how much power is in there. Right over here on the far right hand side, we have a camera mode switch. That'll allow us to switch from video mode to camera mode. On the bottom here, we have a USB-C port for charging it up. Again, we can also use that for updating firmware. And on either side of it, we have places to stow the sticks. These sticks are removable, and when you do get it for the first time, they're going to come stored in the bottom. As you can see there, they just unscrew. And they fit nicely right in those rubber holders. It's definitely a good idea if you're going to be traveling with your drone when you have it packed in a camera bag to remove the sticks. That prevents the gimbals from being damaged during transport. Let's take a look at the top of the controller here. This is our gimbal scroll wheel, so that's going to tilt the gimbal, the camera up and down, but it can also be used to zoom in. And that's what I mentioned about that function button. When you're pressing and holding on the function button and scrolling this wheel, that's going to zoom the camera in and out when you're in Explorer mode. On the other side here, we have our shutter button. Depending on what mode you're in, that'll either take a photo or stop and start recording. To mount a phone in it, we pull the top antenna out, just like that there. And as you can see, it's spring-loaded. That spring tension will hold your phone in firmly. Now tucked down into the bottom there, you can see we have our data cable. One side is actually connected physically to the controller with a USB-C connection, and the other side we can just pull out. You can see by default it comes pre-installed with a lightning connector. Now if you're going to be flying with an Android phone, you're going to have to replace this with a USB-C connector. One did come inside the box. And if you do need to replace it, all you do is pull out the cable just like that, replace it with the appropriate cable, and then plug it back in. To mount the phone, we're just going to slide it in, and then we'll plug in the data cable. To power the controller on and off, it's a double press just like the drone. Quick press, and then a long press. Depending on what kind of phone you have, your DJI app should launch right away. But I'm going to close that because we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. The other thing you're going to notice is these lights at the bottom are going to be blinking, and they will remain blinking until it's connected to the drone. Once the drone and the controller have a good link, those will stay illuminated. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the RC Pro now. This is basically an upgraded version of the standard controller. And as you can see here, it has a built-in screen, so you don't have to go ahead and mount a phone. Not only is it more convenient because you don't have to mess around with cables and plugging a phone in, it's a nice bright screen. It's 1000 nits, so it does make it easier to see on bright sunny days. Screens on phones can get a little bit dim on bright days and it can be hard to see what you're filming. So having a nice bright screen and it's all-in-one ease of use makes it really appealing to a lot of people. Now if you've purchased a Cine model, this is the controller that's going to come with it. However, if you do like the idea of this controller, you can purchase it separately. It's fairly expensive, but in my opinion, it's well worth the upgrade, especially if you're going to be flying a lot. Now, it's not available yet, but supposedly sometime after January, they will be selling a Fly More combo that will come with this controller. So if you're thinking of purchasing the Flymore combo, but you would rather this controller instead of the stock one, you may want to hold off until January. So let's take a quick look around it. It's very similar. As mentioned, we do have the built-in screen. We have a pause button. Above that, we have return to home. We have our power button. We have our mode selector here in the middle. We can go from normal to sport to cine mode. We also have a 5-way button, and there's a lot of different features that are assigned to that button. You can change some camera settings. It's good for toggling through menus. We have a return button over here on the left-hand side. At the top, we have a button for taking photos, and we have another button here for recording video. We have our scroll wheel on the left-hand side here. On the right-hand side, we have a second scroll wheel, and that can be used for zooming in when in Explorer mode. Now, unlike the stock controller where you don't have to fold out any antennas, on this one we have antennas to fold out. And it's a good idea to keep this flat side of the antenna facing the drone. So depending on how you're holding your controller, you'll just have to adjust them accordingly. At the bottom of the controller, we have a spot for a micro SD card. We have a USB-C port, again for charging the controller, but also for connecting it to a computer to update firmware. And we also have an HDMI port. On either side of that, we have some screw holes, and that can be used for attaching accessories such as a lanyard. If we flip it over here, you can see we have 2 spots to hold the control sticks. Again, the control sticks on this device are removable. Right below that, we have 2 customizable buttons. We have one called C1 and C2, and they're assigned different tasks in the menu. You can go in and customize them to do various things. Now, for the most part, they function identically, except as mentioned, this one does have the built-in screen, and it makes it a little bit more convenient. Now, if you're going to be using a smartphone attached to the stock controller, you will need to download and install the DJI Fly App. That's the app that we use to fly the drone. On an iPhone, you're going to download it from the App Store. Just do a quick search for DJI Fly. If you've purchased the smart controller, it's going to have the DJI Fly App pre-installed. If you're going to be connecting an Android device to the stock controller, it's a little bit different on how you get the Fly App. I don't use Android devices, but as far as I know, you have to go directly to the DJI website to download the app. Now at this point, you should have your app installed and ready to go. And continuing on in this tutorial, I'm going to use the RC Pro just because I already have it bound to the drone. But if you have the stock controller with a smartphone attached, you can still follow along because everything else will be identical. Now at this point, before we can fly the drone for the first time, there's a few things we need to do. If you don't already have a DJI account, you will need to create one because we need that DJI account in order to activate the controller and the drone. After we activate it, we're going to also have to update the firmware. It's very important before you fly for the first time is to get that firmware updated. Not only does firmware add missing features, it will also fix problems that have been discovered. Updating the firmware and activating is super simple. All you have to do is power on the drone and the controller, launch the Fly app, and you just have to follow the on-screen instructions. So I've got the controller on here, so I'm going to go ahead and power on the drone. Now at this point, it should prompt you to activate the drone. You're going to want to make sure your phone is connected to the internet or your RC Pro is connected to your Wi-Fi. Just follow the on-screen instructions and it will give you confirmation once it's been activated. At this point, it's going to bring up some information about the DJI Care Refresh. If you haven't purchased it already, it'll give you the option to purchase it. Once the drone is activated, it's then going to give you a message that there is firmware that needs to be installed. You can tap on the firmware update and it's going to give you a list of everything that's going to be installed, and then when you're ready you can just go ahead and update it. One thing to note, during the installation of the firmware, the drone may power on and off a few times. You may even get a message to manually power it on or power it off. Depending on the size of the firmware package, it can take anywhere from a few minutes and even upwards of 10 minutes. When you're done that, you may even get a secondary update notification telling you that the FlySafe database needs to be updated. It's a good idea to go ahead and update that as well. So now at this point, we have everything updated. We've got everything fully charged. You can see we're at the main screen of the Fly app, and this will be the same whether you're using a phone and the stock controller or the RC Pro. So at this point, when you're ready to take a flight, what you're going to do is click on the Go Fly. Now what I'm going to do is going to go in and I'm going to give you a basic walk down of the Fly app, show you where everything is located. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the Fly app. I'll give you a basic rundown here. Now I can't show you everything because we're not up in the air, but we'll start over here at the very top right hand side. You'll see 3 dots. That's how we enter into the settings. We can click on that and you can see it's going to bring up our menu system. Now I'm just going to close that down for now because we'll take a look at that here in a minute. Beside that, we have our satellite indicator. That's going to determine how many satellites we're connected to. It's a good idea, do not take off until you're connected to at least 11 to 12 satellites. Ideally, you want to be connected to more. The drone can't set a home point until it's connected to a certain amount of satellites. And it's very important not to fly until you have a home point set. And that way if something happens, you become disconnected, the drone knows where to come back home to. Right now I'm indoors, so it's not going to connect to very many satellites. And we can actually click on the satellites and it's going to give us some more detailed information. As you can see there, right now I'm connected to 0 satellites. Beside that, the next red little icon there is our obstacle avoidance. The next icon there is our signal strength to the controller. Again, we can click on it to bring up some more information. And the next 2 icons are to do with our battery level. It'll show us things like flight time, how much battery percentage we have. You can see right now it's a green circle. It says we have 97% battery. We can click on it and again it'll bring us some more information. It shows us how long before it'll do an automatic return to home because the battery is getting too low. It shows us how long before a forced landing. Again, if the battery gets too low, it's going to do a forced landing. And then it shows us how much until the battery is completely depleted. So it's very important to keep an eye on that information. Beside that, at the top here, it gives us information about our connectivity. You can see right now it's saying GPS signal weak because I'm inside, so it's not giving us a good connection. That'll give you a message that you're ready to fly when you're able to take off. And at any time we can click on that, and that's going to bring up our safety pre-check. It shows us some information about return to home height, max altitude, max distance. It also gives us some options for our internal storage. We can switch back and forth between the SD card and the internal storage. It also allows us to format it if we need to clear it. That little white arrow will take us back to the main page of the Fly app. On the very left hand side we have our takeoff button. When we're up in the air, that will turn into a land button or a return to home button. That same button controls both. When we press on it, it gives us the option to either land in place or return to home. At the bottom left hand side we have our map view. We can click on that. It's going to bring up a small version of the map. Kind of shows us where we are. At any time we can click on that and it'll give us a bigger version. To make full use of that map, you do have to be connected to cellular service, but you definitely do not need to be connected to cellular to fly a drone. The map is also a good tool to check your home location. As mentioned, when you take off, it's going to set a home point, and it's a good idea to go into that map just to make sure the home point is set correctly nearby where you're flying. And if you want to get the map out of the way, you just hit that arrow down in the bottom left hand corner. Beside that, down here at the bottom, it shows us all our telemetry data. So that's going to show us our distance, our altitude, how fast we're flying. So again, some very important information that you need to keep an eye on. On the very right hand side here, it gives us some information and some camera settings. You can see it shows us our memory card, how much storage is available. And beside that, we have some quick camera information. And we can click on that to change certain settings. You can see we can change our resolution and frame rate. Beside that, we can change our EV compensation. We can adjust the exposure if things look a little overexposed or underexposed. Now we can switch it over to manual mode, or what DJI calls Pro mode. And we do so by clicking that little auto button. That's going to bring up a lot of different settings that we can change. Now I'm not going to go into all that in this video, but something definitely to check out. Very right hand side here we have a couple buttons. This first one, the play button, that's going to bring us into the gallery view, I guess you call it. And it'll show us a preview of all the different content we've captured. Now anything that it previews in that gallery is just a low-res version that it's made a copy of. The high-res version is always going to be stored on the memory card. Above that we have our shutter and record button. To the side of that we have our focus button. We can either have it in automatic focus, or if you want to get creative you can put it in manual focus. And right above the focus button we have our Explorer mode. We can enable that, and that's going to be what allows us to zoom in to the 28 times. Just keep in mind when you do enable Explorer mode, you're very limited to your camera settings, frame rates, and resolutions. And finally, right above the shutter button, we have a film strip. That's how we're going to go in and change different modes, capture hyperlapses, all the different intelligent flight modes. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the other settings we can change. We'll click on those 3 dots. I'm not going to go over all the settings that are contained within that menu, just we'd be here forever, but I will go over some of the more important ones that you want to make note of. The first tab at the top is safety, and this is important to really go over before you fly for the first time. The first thing we can change here is our obstacle avoidance behavior. We can disable it completely. We can have it set to brake, so if it encounters an object, the drone is just going to stop in its tracks. The other thing we can enable is APAS, where it bypasses an obstacle. So if you're flying towards a tree, the drone is going to find a safe route past it. Some other important information there is our max altitude. So legally you can only fly to 120 meters or 400 feet. So if you don't want to go over that, which is not recommended, you want to make sure that's set at 120 meters. And in fact, you may not even want to go that high. You might want to set it to something like 40 or 50 meters if that's all you're comfortable flying. We can set our max distance, so the drone, when it gets to that max distance, it'll just stop. So if you don't want to fly too far away, maybe 100 meters, you can set that to whatever you feel comfortable at. The next one that's really important is our return to home altitude. Basically, in the event of a disconnection in some situations, the drone will go to that return to home altitude before it comes back to you. So it's a good idea to set that higher than the tallest obstacle around you. Now with the Mavic 3, they have a new return to home system this year called Advanced Return to Home. And basically it's going to bypass that return to home altitude. It's just going to come home to you in the most efficient route possible. Along the way, it's going to avoid obstacles, come back to where you took off from, and then land. But that advanced return to home only works when lighting conditions are perfect. But if it determines it can't use the obstacle avoidance, then it will revert back to the normal smart return to home. The other things that are important to note here are the two main calibrations: compass calibration and IMU calibration. The IMU is probably something you don't have to do unless you're getting an error, or if you notice the drone is behaving a little oddly, then you can come in and calibrate the IMU. It's a very simple procedure. I actually have a video on my channel showing you how to do that. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds. The other is a compass calibration, and that is something that you should do fairly frequently. Sometimes you may get a compass error, or if you're changing certain locations, it's sometimes a good idea to do it. It literally takes about 10 seconds, and it just ensures that you have a good flight. I don't do it every time I fly. If I'm going to a place maybe I've never been before, and I just want to make sure that everything is working the way it should, I'll sometimes do one quickly. And sometimes when you turn the drone on and you go to fly, it will actually give you a compass error, and it will tell you that you need to go in and calibrate it. Again, just follow the on-screen instructions. It takes about 10 seconds. And then you'll be good to go. And of course, there are a ton of other settings in here, but it's just something you should go in and explore on your own. Just get yourself familiar with everything you can adjust. Now I'm going to go out and do a first flight, just a quick demonstration. But a couple things I do want to go over with you here first, and that is the control sticks. And the function of them is actually fairly simple. On the left control stick here, if we push it up, the drone is going to move upwards. It's going to increase its altitude. If we pull it down, the drone altitude will decrease. If we go from side to side, that's going to yaw the drone, otherwise known as spinning. It's basically just going to spin the drone in the position it's at. The right hand stick is for other different movements. For example, if we push it forward, the drone is going to move forward. If we pull it back, the drone will move back. If we push it from side to side, the drone will move side to side accordingly. So it's a really good idea to memorize those commands. And used in conjunction together, you can get some really dynamic movements. So at this point, we're going to go out in the field. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to launch and land your drone. And then we'll come back and we'll wrap things up. So when you're ready to take your first flight, make sure you find a nice open field or park to fly. A place where there's not a lot of obstacles or people around, just until you get comfortable with the way the drone's going to behave. Now to take off, there's two actual ways we can do it. We can use a series of stick commands manually, or we can use a button on the screen there. I'm going to show you both methods here quickly. So the first method is to press that takeoff button on the left hand side. When we press it, another message will pop up asking us to take off. All you have to do is press and hold that, and you can see the drone is going to take off. It's going to raise to about a meter and a half, and just hover there until you're ready to input some commands on the stick. So you could fly around, fly back to your landing pad, and when you're ready to land, you can see that button is now changed to a landing button. So we can just press on it there. You can see another message pops up asking us to land. We just press and hold, and the drone's going to come down and land. The next way to do it is manually by doing a series of stick commands. And to do that, all we're going to do is pull down on the sticks. We're going to press them in. You're going to see the motors are going to start on the drone, but it's not going to take off yet. It won't take off until you press up on the left control stick, as you can see there. Now again, the drone's just going to sit there and hover until you tell it to do something by using your sticks. If you want to land the drone manually, again, all you have to do is pull down on that left stick. You can see the drone is going to come down. And you can use your right stick just to kind of move it over a little bit if need be. So let's go ahead, we'll put it back up in the air here. Another thing is to make sure that your home point is set. Make sure there's a home point set from where you are. As you can see, we have an H there. That is our home point. The blue dot is me, and the blue triangle is the drone. And you just want to make sure that is set properly in case it does become disconnected. It knows where it's going to come home to. So at this point, you just have to get out and fly and just learn how to control it. It's a good idea to keep it maybe in cine mode, which is the slowest mode, until you get comfortable with the controls. I'm going to put it over into normal mode. Normal mode flies a lot faster. And as you can see here, we're going into what's called a low battery return to home. So it's just going to count down and automatically the drone will start to come home. And that will change depending on how far away you are. The automatic return to home, if you're a mile out, will start sooner than if you are right close by. At any time, you can press that red X to cancel it. Now I am going to be making a video, or perhaps I've already uploaded it, going a little bit more into detail on return to home. So as mentioned, just spend some time on the sticks, get comfortable with things. It's quite normal to have a little bit of anxiety when you're first learning to fly. That will go away fairly quickly. So as a new pilot, I highly recommend your first flight to find a nice open field or park with not a lot of obstacles, not a lot of people around. Don't go too crazy, just get a good feel of the sticks first. Although these drones have a lot of fail-safe features like obstacle avoidance, return to home, accidents can still happen, so make sure on your first flight you're fully aware of your surroundings. Make sure you have a good idea of potential obstacles that are around you. Well folks, I really hope you enjoyed this beginner's guide and found it useful. If you're new to drones, I invite you to subscribe to my channel as I feature a lot of different drone tips and tutorials. We cover new releases, reviews, and of course a lot of accessories for your drones. Because the Mavic 3 is brand new, there's going to be a lot of updated firmware over the coming months, so make sure you stick around for that as I'll be covering all the updates as they come in. If you enjoyed this video and got some value out of it, please give it a thumbs up. It's always greatly appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we'll see you in the next one.